No, I was looking down so people could see.
Cal, is it best if we use this one? That would work out the
There,
best.
that's fine.
That's not fair. Hot seat on the end of the table. You'll be really wrong. Where are you? I just didn't hear.
Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Next, I'd like to call the committee's attention to the agenda, which I sent out earlier this week. Are there any changes or corrections in that agenda? One change that I would like to make, and that concerns the minutes. Since I was unable to send you the minutes prior to tonight's meeting, we'll dispense with the reading and approval of those minutes. If there are no other changes or corrections to the, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. John did. For the benefit of those of you who are in attendance tonight, as well as our people who are viewing this meeting on the Mel TV 3, I would like to briefly explain and discuss the purpose of our committee. The committee was appointed by the mayor and council this past July. Its purpose or task at that time, the assignment it was given, was to perform an assessment of the space needs required by our community and by the city. It is the duty of the committee, according to that assignment, to give consideration to the facilities presently available and to obtain input from the community with regard to space requirements and services which the community feels should be met. Tonight's public meeting is one method of obtaining that input. Another method that we are using was an informal survey or questionnaire which we sent out to 50-some organizations and groups within the community. Our response to that survey has been very good. We also, of course, discussed the matter at great length to this point. When we have evaluated all of our information, we will assemble it into a report which we will present to the mayor and council. The report will summarize our research and outline the space and service needs which we feel the community should address in the near future. Are there any questions regarding the role of this community, the role of this committee at this time? Then let's begin with the presentations. Because we're using one camera tonight, for those of you who are giving presentations before our committee, I would like to use this chair. Would the first one come forward, please?
Do you have a question format that you
No, we
will
don't.
use, or just like me to summarize what our recommendations would be? I did broke it down into the questions that you had sent on your questionnaire. And I'm representing the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Industrial and Commercial Development Commission. And perhaps we can kind of summarize these both together. There are a few items that are a little bit different, but overall I think we have probably the same concerns or a lot of the questions that we did ask. First of all, I guess for the Industrial and Commercial Development Commission, I would like to say that we have not had a meeting since your questionnaire came out. So what I am doing is trying to summarize what I feel the philosophy of the commission is, because we have formulated a lot of policy recommendations in the past as we compile the booklet for the Star City designation. And so I think we can draw some of our recommendations from that. And your first question was dealing with the available meeting space in Melrose. And from both of the commission standpoints, I think we feel that there is a lack of quality meeting space in the city of Melrose. Just looking at public meetings or simulated meetings even, there's just not enough space. The Planning and Zoning Commission meets the same evening as the City Council, And we generally start out in this room, we meet at 6 o'clock, the council meets at 7. We start in this room, we generally end up putting our meeting in the city office area where we conduct the city office business just across the hall. It's not a very good place to hold a meeting, especially if we have a public hearing. We end up moving everybody from this room over there, and it's not an adequate place to hold a public hearing, and very crowded. And so, from both commission standpoints, I think we feel that we don't have enough meeting space even for just the city functions, not including all the various groups in town that we meeting places. As far as accommodations go for our commissions, all we really need is an adequate meeting room, and for the planning and zoning, we need a room where we can have public hearing. So our needs are not great, we just need some space. We need space that's not interrupted several times a night. Library question, we don't use it as a commission, but I think we feel that if we lost the library in this community, it would be a great loss, because it's a key ingredient in the intellectual growth and stimulation of the youth in this community as well as the adults, and it's a great asset. How often have we visited the city office building in the past year? Sometimes too often. All our meetings are held here, and so we're very familiar with the building itself, and most of us on the commissions have attended at least one city council meeting. And I wasn't sure your reaction to the facility question. You meant the meeting room or the building as a whole, so they answered it both ways. I think we feel the city office meeting room is not adequate for the number of meetings that are held here and the types that are held here. It's just stressed to the maximum. There's just not enough room here. And the city continues to grow and expand, but the city office building can't, because it was never meant to be a city office building. It's just been kind of adapted to become one, and trying to change it into a city office building now just isn't feasible from an economic standpoint. What I also did, going back to the Industrial Commercial Development Commission, one of the things we did in compiling our Star City program, we did a 5-year capital improvement plan. And at that time, one of the things that we had in the capital improvement plan was a city office library complex. And we projected that for the year 1989. And I've included a copy of this in the report that I've given your committee. And I highlighted the areas that would be important to you. And what I also did from the Planning and Zoning Commission standpoint, since we're in the process of reviewing our comprehensive plan and our ordinance, back in April, we sat down with the planner that the city has hired, and we were just looking at some of the general concerns and issues that the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission felt were important to the city of Melrose. And I highlighted a number of those, and I'll just read 4 of them. One, does the city need a community center? How can the city construct a new library? How can the city construct a new city hall? And how can the city construct a new museum, a historical museum? And the planner then said, if you could, out of all these items that we talked about, what would be 5 priorities that you would like to see resolved if there were no budget limitations? And one of those was a new library and city office complex. So both the commissions would come up on a regular basis. And from the planning and zoning standpoint, I think the timing for this is ideal, because it allows us to include the needs in a comprehensive plan. And if the needs are there, we can tailor the ordinance to accommodate those at this time, so we don't have to go back and do that. So the timing on this is really ideal. And the last question, excuse me, does the city need public restrooms? And if so, where should they be located? I guess the answer to the question is fairly easy. Yes, it would seem a tremendous idea, but then the question becomes difficult: where do you put them? It would seem logical that they should be in public restrooms should be incorporated into a city office library complex, but that doesn't address the problem: where do you have public restrooms when the city office library complex is closed? Say, for example, evenings and weekends. So recommendation would be, in addition to public restroom facilities in the city office library complex, perhaps a public restroom could be included in a combination of public information chamber office in the downtown commercial area. and could satisfy several needs at one time. That would conclude the recommendations that I would have at this time, based on the questions that you submitted. If you have any questions on that, if you want me to elaborate further, I can try.
Anyone have any questions of Aaron this time? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm here representing TOPS. TOPS is an organization that's been in existence in this city for 23 years. I'm not sure that everybody knows that. For all of those 23 years, TOPS has met in my home. At least our particular chapter of TOPS has met in my home. And one of the reasons that they meet in my home and will continue to meet in my home is because there is no rent-free meeting room available in the city outside of this room that we're in right now. And that becomes a real problem for a group that doesn't have a great deal of money. TOPS is a nonprofit organization. We subsist on $1 a month dues from our membership, and that takes care of all of our financial needs, and we do not have any money left over. Our needs, were we to move out of my home, and our needs would be, we would need a room that would accommodate 20 to 30 chairs and a table, probably at the head of the room. We would need a place to make coffee, so we would have to have access to a sink so we could get some water. We would need a secured area to keep our scale and whatever file books would be left, or whatever books that we would have to leave at the meeting hall that the people wouldn't want to take home each week. And I think that, you know, there is a real need for this type of a room, not only for TOPS, but for other organizations with similar problems. I would be able to happy to answer any of your questions. I've compiled a couple myself that I think that are pretty weighty questions, and if you like, I will share them with you. I think one of the questions should be, should the city provide space for nonprofit or charitable groups to meet with a minimum or no rental fee? Well, I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's one of the major questions that has to be asked and has to be answered, probably by the whole group. If the city does not do this, then who should? If there is no space available for nonprofit charitable groups, what happens to these groups? And I think, you know, there have been 2 other TOPS chapters that have been started in the city and didn't last very long, probably for that very reason. They were driven out because there was no way that they could pay the rental fee for a meeting. And then the big question, I think, is at what point does a rent-free meeting room compete with the organizations that have space to rent, such as the VFW and the Legion?
Those are very good questions. Obviously, our intent here is not to compete with, you know, organizations such as the Legion and VFW. That's not our purpose. Our purpose is to, at this point, find out what the needs are in the community, and then see who can best serve those, whether it is the facilities that are available through the Legion and the VFW, or whether it's public facilities such as the city should provide. Any other comments?
I don't have any other comments. If you have any questions.
Do you have any questions for them?
Monthly meeting?
Weekly. We meet every week. That is another problem, you know, where do you find a meeting room that you can have a space for, say, 2 hours every week? And we meet on Tuesday afternoon, so we don't compete with any of the evening meetings.
If such a meeting room existed, would you be able to switch your schedule in order to coordinate with other groups meeting, or to get the best use of the room?
We could switch to a different day, but we would like some consistency with that day and with the time.
I think that's pretty much common with all the organizations around here. They like to keep the same, once they get into a standard date, to continue that routine, so that the members can plan on that day.
Right. It's kind of important, if you're going to build your life around a weekly meeting, you have to know when that time is. And it can't be moving around. That doesn't work real well.
Okay.
Now can I change hats?
Oh, you certainly may.
I'm also chairman of the Utility Commission. And as chairman of the Utility Commission, we did discuss the needs assessment questionnaire that your committee sent to us. And it was a feeling of the commission that as long as the council has chambers, we'll have some place to meet. Because we do not meet ever at the same time that the council meets. And our needs are very similar as the council meetings are, chambers are. So I guess that's about all I would have to say on behalf of the Utility Commission. And I don't know if you have any questions there. One thing that's important, like for the Utility Commission as well as the council, is to have a place where the council can sit and somebody can give a presentation to that council where where you're not looking at somebody's back. And that, this room is so narrow and long that when we have someone give a presentation, and we do that very often at Utility Commission meetings, we, for instance, right now have a project going, a wastewater treatment facility project, that our engineering firm, Automation Incorporated, and our fiscal consultant need to talk to us about very often. And for a place for them to present something to us where we can all see it is a problem in this room. And it is a need, I think. Thank you.
Would you see the need for some automated audiovisual type equipment in your council chamber or your utility commission?
No, I don't think so. I think when we have, they generally bring whatever they need, but they need a place to set it up. Like this easel that you're looking at right back here is it. This is about the only spot we have unless we go out into that room. If we have people in attendance, then we have the situation of people having their backs to the presenter. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Evening, Ken.
I want to thank you first of all for asking LTV to contribute to this committee tonight. And to begin with, because we're such a new organization in the community, I think I'd like to take just a few moments and explain some of our purposes and goals to you. First of all, we consider ourselves to be a sort of mirror for the community of Melrose. We intend to inform, to educate, and to entertain with our community television. We want to reach all segments of the population. We hope to reach the senior citizens, the preschoolers, the people, the average person who has not time to attend some of the civic functions that go on within the community. And with our television, and through the media of television, we can include them in the things that are going on. They can sit at home and watch, just as they may see it as tape. Our needs are not too complicated. First of all, We are basically a self-supporting unit. All of our basic equipment is already purchased. There would be no equipment that we would need to start up in a new facility. Space, again, is a problem, and Elaine just said that before. What is being done in recent years, when they are building a city complex, a city government complex, they have built the city council chambers so that it actually functions as a studio. In other words, the city council chambers could be used as in a dual purpose capacity as a studio for other presentations within the community. In doing that, they construct it so that the cameras are hidden and not intrusive like ours are here tonight, as you notice. We don't have the microphones hanging from the light fixtures. We don't have those tonight, but on council meeting nights we do. We don't have cables running all over. We would be non-intrusive. We would not be people who would be appearing before the council would really not be aware of our presence at all. Equipment being as it is, it does break down, and there's not the scramble to try to fix something and still not interrupt the proceedings. The room would be wired for all the electrical needs. It would have sound. It would have soundproofing for the studio area. The switching would be built in so that it would be a very simple matter to televise any of the meetings that would go on within this complex. I haven't actually seen one of these, but I have an opportunity to view some of those in the future if it would be helpful to anyone. The size requirements are not very great either. It's not like a stage production where you need a lot of backstage area. Television is relatively simple to stage. But the shape, again, is important, as Elaine pointed out, because we are limited in a long, narrow facility with what we can do with camera angles and that kind of thing. We would like a ground floor location for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's difficult to haul equipment up and down the stairs. Also, for the handicapped, access for the handicapped, public access television is uniquely suited for using handicapped people. It's something they can work at and become involved in. And I would like to see people in our community do that. Also, senior citizens can be very helpful in public access, and sometimes stairs provide a problem to them. We would be looking for a secure area because of the value of our equipment, and also fireproof. A fireproof facility would be nice. Frame buildings such as this, I think everyone realizes, does not provide that to the extent that it could. Heating, cooling, and ventilation are rather important to the function of some of our equipment, and that would be in the general engineering of a new building, so that doesn't apply only to us. We think that Mel TV is or has become an integral part of the city government by virtue of the fact that we do bring the city council meetings to the people. And we really feel that the place for public access television would be within the city complex building. We've been very grateful to the city for the space that they've given us to use and the cooperation from everyone within the city. And we'd like to keep on, if we may, in bringing you city government via television. Questions?
You're talking about the council chamber serving as a studio when it's not being used as a council chamber or for other meetings. Are you also talking about a small room off to the side to handle editing equipment?
Yes, yes, of course. Yes. Our actual facility would be separate from the council chamber, but the council chamber could be used. Thank you.
Thank you, Cal.
call Mel TV. Mel TV is here to capture the present. We're here to preserve the past, and we're both relatively new organizations in the community, and I think we're both off to excellent starts, and we're both experiencing growing pains, and those are the types of things that space needs in the city, if addressed, could offer us some relief. I'm going to speak mainly to the question of the space that we need for a museum complex. As some people probably know, we do have a museum operating right now in the basement of the library, the house right next door here. There are several problems with that space. It's nice to have it, it's a nice place to start, but we're fast outgrowing that space. The current display space is inadequate and inappropriate. I think when we had our ice cream social, we had over 200 people there that afternoon. We had to send them down in groups of 7 to view the area. Otherwise, it was just, we had people 20 or 30 deep standing there waiting to go down because there were just not enough room down there. You'd be stepping on one another, you couldn't see the displays. So people have been generous in giving us things to display, but we really don't have a display space that would do them justice. Some items we haven't even gotten yet because people are saying, we won't give you this until you've got a space, appropriate to display it. And some of the items wouldn't fit down the steps, and so we aren't going to put them any place, or they're not even going to be donated until we have a space that will adequately accommodate them. We need some permanence, I guess. We're looking for a place we can grow in, and I guess we're looking for a place that we don't grow out of every year or two. We operate on volunteer help, and I think volunteers would be reluctant to spend all their time fixing up old temporary space. There's a myriad of things to do in terms of volunteers. Our volunteers are busy every time they come into the quarters we have now, cataloging contributions and doing all the paperwork that's going to go with the first-class operation. And I just don't think they're going to want to be fixing up old temporary space all the time. So if we move from this old facility to that old facility, it's just not going to be adequate. Also, we have to look at the safety of valuable exhibits. Some of the things we get are valuable, or people who give them feel they're valuable. And so we have to be concerned with, is the facility fireproof? Can they be protected from being stolen? Given the problems of people could just pick up something and walk off with it currently, and our displays are in 3 different rooms, and it'd be hard to monitor the comings and goings of people. So if somebody wanted to walk off with one of our older, nicer exhibits, it would be very simple to do that. So I think people are going to be hesitant to give us valuable things from a historical standpoint until they know that they can be housed in a safe and secure facility. The space we have now has great fluctuations in humidity and temperature. When the library is open upstairs, we have heat. When the library is not open, we don't have heat. And anyone who's done anything with historical exhibits knows that great fluctuations in temperature and humidity are not good for the life of any number of old things, newspapers, documents, tapes, videotapes, audio tapes, clothing, furniture are all going to cool off and warm up and have huge fluctuations in humidity that are just going to cause them to deteriorate. And so you really can't operate a first-class museum in a facility that doesn't have some temperature and humidity control. And again, I mentioned that the facility should be fireproof, much better than a wood frame structure can be, so that we can have some security in our exhibits. The current space is inaccessible to many elderly and handicapped, and people that want to visit our museum, or people that might find it interesting to work as volunteers, would find it very difficult to get into that facility and to offer us their work, or to come in as a public and view what we have to offer. And I think particularly the elderly would find much of what we have to do there as volunteers, and much of what we have to offer as exhibits to be very exciting. They would like to come and see this, so I think we should make it available to them. We don't have adequate bathroom facilities. I don't know if we have any bathroom facilities, but if we do, they're the same facilities that the library has, and I would guess when the library is closed, we don't have any facilities to use. And then the last thing is, the location doesn't encourage a drop-in use. It's not very public. I think it would be nice if our museum was in a high-traffic area, someplace that people could see it and drop in. Visitors to the community would know that it's there because they go by it, and it would be available to them. I think it'd be one measure of civic pride as to how we preserve our past and how we prepare for our future. And I think some type of new facility for the museum, as well as some of our other needs, would certainly continue to qualify us as a star city. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
How large of a facility or square footage, or can you give an estimate of what your needs you think might be over the next 5 years?
I guess we haven't sat down and put pencil to paper on square footage needs. Substantially larger than the current facility, because our volunteers tell us that items are just coming in at a tremendous pace. We have an old record player sitting right out here in the hall, that for lack of space down there, we sometimes exhibit some of our items out here in the hallway, but that not being the safest place. So I guess we'd really have to give that some thought, to look to other areas as to what we might need. But I think it has to be a space we can grow into, because if it's a place we're gonna grow out of right away, we're gonna end up moving valuable historical things. And every time you move those types of things, they're going to deteriorate in one way or another. And we kind of make a promise to people that we're gonna take good care of the things they give us. And people have been generous. But if they came down and saw where they're sitting, they might be less than generous. And some people have those. They just aren't going to contribute until we get a spot that will be appropriate for Aunt Sally's wedding dress or whatever. It doesn't look good hanging amongst the pipes in the basement.
Joe, has your committee given any thought as to what you would like for facilities into a complex, one full building where you incorporate everything, the library, the chamber, meeting rooms, everything in one building, or have you given thoughts to a separate location and a separate building for it?
Well, I guess two things that are there. It depends on where the complex would be located, because once again, I think we're looking for some public, we want to be in the public eye, we want to be visible, we don't want to be off in a place that people don't find or aren't reminded of. So that would be one factor. If we were going to be part of a complex, we hope that it would be a visible complex to the public. The second thing is, it might be advantageous to have it as part of a complex. To rely on volunteers to staff the museum might be kind of difficult, and it could be possible that, I'm not sure our library personnel could be counted on to staff the facility, since I don't know what their rules and regulations are in terms of the Creighton River Regional Library and how they use their employees, but possibly city staff, if it was part of a chamber building or part of a city office complex, possibly some of the staff could provide for the facility to be open a little more often and active, so people who might be there, just so the facility could be open. I guess there's advantages both ways, but I kind of see it as part of a complex. I think that would be nice. Increase the traffic, I'm sure.
Have you been in contact with any of the other historical societies? How do they have funding? How do they write funding for their facilities? Is it provided through the county, or is it provided by donations?
Well, the county provides some money. The mill levy provides some levy. The county mill levy provides some money. And I think some of that goes to the County Historical Society, and we can get some benefit from some of those funds. I think basically we have to rely on our own community. We have memberships in the society, but that does not generate enough money to acquire a building or to probably maintain a building. I think there's going to have to be some help from the city to keep a building in repair and to keep it functional. Painesville has 4 different sites. They have an 18-year-old historical society, and I think they were able to get an old church building as one of their first buildings. They have several other buildings that they've gotten over the years. How they're funded, I'm not sure. Maybe Dottie could address some of those questions better because
I could answer that. The historical societies can get grants and funding from the state and from the county for the purpose of preserving artifacts, such as your ventilation systems and maybe fireproofing, filing cabinets, this type of thing. We cannot get any funding whatsoever for a building itself. That's just not allowed by state laws.
Can it be a multi-purpose building?
Sure. We can, once we have a building, then to get this building ready for preserving these artifacts, we can get grants. We can apply for grants. If we get them, that's another story. But they are available, we can apply for them. But we have to find our own building, either through the city or raising funds in some way ourselves.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. All right.
Sound good.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ernie Kachimba, and I am this year's Chamber of Commerce President. We represent the business people, people that are interested in our community affairs here in town, and we feel that the issues that the committee has put before us are very pertinent to our concerns, and we'd like to address them. On October 8th, the chamber held our monthly meeting. I put forth the 6 questions in front of our board. We felt that we discussed them, we've come up with some views and some recommendations, and at this particular time we'd like to address each individual question. As far as, do we have enough meeting space in Melrose? The Melrose Chamber is approximately over 100 members. We feel that in the past several years we've bounced around from restaurants to the Legion clubs to the fire halls, and now we are presently meeting at the American Legion Club. We feel that we need something much more permanent in order for us to be more effective, not only effective to serve the needs of the Melrose community, but also to serve the members of the chamber as a whole. We feel that we've tried, in the past, we've tried the fire hall, their meeting room, but we've run into some scheduling conflicts with the training as far as the ambulance corps and also the fire department. So after several meetings there and with irregularities in the meetings that we had to postpone, we had to find another site. Fortunately for us, the American Legion provided us with a meeting space, but there again, I feel that that is very short term. The chamber cannot expect to go along year after year on a specific date without interfering with the regular business of the American Legion. They have functions that they have to run. These are money-making functions, and they need those functions to survive, and they cannot expect the Melrose Chamber to keep taking up some of those time slots. And at the same time, the chamber needs to meet on a regular basis. As far as accommodations go, when we meet once a month, our meetings can vary from 20 to 60 people in size. We feel 20 is a very minimum, and I just took a head count while I was in here. We can approximately seat, besides the 12-member board, we can approximately seat maybe another 20 members. This facility is simply too small for our needs. And at the same time, year after year, the chamber looks for some place to meet because we feel we're a very viable organization in our community. We need to meet on a regular basis, but we have to have a better sized facility in order for us to meet. As far as the questions go, do we use a library? Well, the views of the chamber are very explicit. We feel that sometimes it's the only source of reading and data for some of our people in town. And we feel as a chamber that the city has an obligation to provide the city with a proper facility as far as the library goes. Not only should it be well equipped and well inventoried, but also to make the facility accessible with proper time slots. And that, when I'm talking about proper time slots, I'm talking about opening and closing. We don't necessarily have to be open at 8 o'clock in the morning, but when the evening comes around, when the people have the time to use a library, or their only time to use a library, we should make this facility accessible for those proper time slots. Again, let me iterate that the chamber is very explicit on this. They feel very strongly that the size community that we have, we should have a proper library and it should be well equipped, well inventoried with the proper time slots. How often do we visit our city office? Well, the chamber uses it quite regularly. We need the city office regarding information as far as new businesses, new people coming into our community, business updates, proper grants, tax issue that affects our businesses. We need the city offices. We use it on a regular basis. It's very, very important for us, and the chamber uses it quite often. Does the city need some restroom? The chamber sure would like to see it. Every other community does have restrooms provided, public telephones provided. The Melrose community does not. The only source of restrooms right now that are available are through private business places, schools, maybe our city facility is used, but right now we really do not have anything that's accessible as far as restrooms and a public telephone is concerned. The chamber has made some recommendations, and we just, for 5 or 10 minutes, we sat down and thought about different places where possibility we could put something like this here. One of the places was where the present weigh scale is, where if they could build a restroom facility, not only that, maybe an information center to go along with it with a public telephone. Another place, and it's a possibility, would be the old, very old Melrose telephone office. Not where the service center is now, but the facility that they use for storage. And what I like to say, these are just proposals that people have tossed out as possible places to put a public restroom. Another spot would be to use the Powerhouse property. It's down Main Street. It's just off the business core. The land is already owned by the city. There's a possibility of putting something there. These are just some of the possibilities as far as putting in public restrooms and telephone. We'd like to see, and when asked of the chamber board, would they like to see separate facilities as far as a library in one spot, the business or the council office in another spot? They'd like it all together if possible in one building. The library, the meeting room, the city functions, as far as the offices go, the secretaries, they'd like to see it all in one building. They feel that if they can do it all in one, they could save the taxpayers some money by doing it all at once. At the same time, it would be centrally located, something that the Melrose community could get behind and use 100%. The chamber feels that the library and the city offices should be together along with a good-sized meeting place. We'd like to make another recommendation. We're looking at, in the meeting place, we'd like to see it maybe approximately 100 people. And if possible, that meeting place could be partitioned off if it runs into, if say we have 2 meetings that particular evening. possible that we could partition it off and still hold 2 meetings if we had facilities to hold about approximately 100 people. So, do I have any questions as far as the chamber views? John?
Do you feel there's support for this to happen sometime in the near future? Strong support, or from the business people on Main Street?
I feel the chamber, I've discussed it, and there again, it's not with the full chamber that we've discussed everything, but I've talked to random people that are involved in the chamber, and it's their feeling that if and when the library has to be built, and the chamber feels very strongly that it should be built, and it should be built properly, that it can house good equipment and inventory, that the city offices should be probably built at the same time.
Ernie, your suggestion for spots for restroom, you point out one is where the scale is now, the weighing scale. Have you looked into or know just how much of that property belongs to the Burlington Northern?
We have not.
Well, I think you're going to find that runs out quite a ways. You may run into a problem there. The other one that you mentioned is the powerhouse property. What do you mean by powerhouse property? What area are you talking about?
The east side of the powerhouse.
That runs all the way down to the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're aware of the fact that the memorial, Veterans Memorial is sitting there, and that's the Veterans Memorial Park. I'm pretty certain you're going to run into a lot of flack from both the Legion and the VFW in getting into that area.
Again, Johnny, I don't disagree with any of that. I'm sure that the proposal was meant to go even east of the memorial. We do not feel that a large facility is needed for a public restroom. We just want something that would be adequate for our community. A full-scale information center, maybe not. But at the same time, these are just proposals that we sat down, and don't take this as gospel, because this is simply, we just sat down as a kind of a brainstorming unit as to find possible spots to put restrooms.
And that's exactly what was supposed to be done, you know, we just wanted input and what the needs are and where it might go, and then the rest will be hammered out later. And your point is well taken, you know, from my experience in the past, that is the Veterans Memorial Park, and we want to preserve that.
But we feel as a chamber that restrooms, we should have them. They should be provided someplace possibly down Main Street or very close to Main Street. Another spot that was brought up would be possibly where if there would be a spot located by the city parking lot. There's a lot of parking that goes in there now. If there would be a spot available to put public restrooms around that particular area.
Ernie, you didn't mention anything about a chamber office. Was that brought up?
It was not at that particular time. When discussed previously, depending on where this complex would be located, they feel that they would like to see the chamber office visible down Main Street someplace versus off on a side street someplace. The chamber office should be visible, and when talked to several of the chamber members, they'd like to see it on Main Street.
Any other questions?
It's a very good possibility and probability that the chamber, if at all possible, maybe the public restrooms, the chamber, maybe an information center could be built someplace downtown if there would be a lot available. Everything all centrally located, of course. We're not sure. There's some possibilities down Main Street right now. Now, whether the city feels that should be used up for public information, a public restroom, they would have to use their own discretion on that.
Has the chamber discussed putting a public restroom next to where the Snyder drugstore is?
They have, but there's been some very mixed feelings as far as that goes. Part of the chamber feels that that's a prime downtown location, should be used for business, should not be used for public restrooms and information. There's also, on the other hand, a very good segment of the chamber that feels that that would be an ideal spot for chamber office, restrooms, and information, a public telephone. The feeling is very, very mixed. So as far as the chamber's leaning, it would be 50-50. There would be no clear-cut choice on that particular spot. I want to emphasize that the feelings that we discussed are the feelings of mostly the board and some of the membership, not the whole general membership as a whole. So if there are any chamber members here or present that have not discussed it with our board and would like to view their comments at this time, it would be appropriate to.
We're mainly interested in trying to find the needs of the community and not express our own opinions too much at this point, I think. And so I don't think we have too many opinions that we want to come forward with.
Here.
I'm changing hats also. In addition to being on the committee, I'm also president of the JC's in Melrose, so I've been asked to talk with JC's. Since I get tongue-tied at times, I think I'm going to read instead of trying to be such an orator. The Melrose JC's have been asked for a response in a position regarding the community needs that have been identified. The JC's Board of Directors completed and returned a questionnaire, and a chapter discussed the matter at last week's monthly meeting. Unfortunately, attendance at the meeting was somewhat limited, and so some of our members not in attendance may have views of their own. As best as we can tell, the chapter has some basic opinions on needs. However, we must point out that there are two different needs, namely our own chapter's needs and that which we view of the communities. Our chapter's basic need at present, as many other groups is a meeting room. At present, we are meeting in the high school in a room that one of our members has been assigned due to his role as a teacher. This is working out fairly well, but is somewhat limiting on the need to schedule meetings around his schedule and the need to conclude the after-meeting visiting and camaraderie earlier than desired at times. We would like to eventually have a meeting room that has seating capacity for 30 to 40 people comfortably and can be reserved twice a month on the same day of the week on an ongoing basis. We would like to be able to leave an upright 4-drawer file and a few other basic supplies in a corner of the room or closet. We would like to be allowed to hang awards, etc. on one of the walls if possible, but this isn't absolutely a necessity. The JCs have requested that we be allowed to use a meeting room located in the fire hall, but have been turned down. Since this was not the original purpose of the room, and because we are not the only ones requesting its use. The fire department, understandably, has a difficult time deciding how to be fair to all who request use of the room, since it is true that if everyone were allowed to use a room, it probably would not be available for the fire department and ambulance meetings. The JCs would like the city to broaden the use of the room in the fire hall to allow additional use of it without restricting the fire department's or ambulance services use of it to any large degree. After this has been done, and if there is still a need for additional meeting room space, we would gladly support any recommendation for construction or acquisition of additional facilities. The J.C.'s are supportive and agree that the community has additional following needs. In addition to the meeting space, we feel public bathroom facilities that are conveniently located to the downtown businesses are needed, possibly in the vacant lot next to Snyder Drug. There are many other sites that are also possible. We have not discussed it in great detail. And also, we would like to see an ongoing relationship with the present library system. Our members did not comment to a great degree on this, except that there was a need and that many of them have young families who they would hope to use the library system in the future and would like to develop this. So thank you for listening to our position tonight.
Anybody have any questions about regarding the J.C.'s?
How often do the firemen and the ambulance corps meet? I mean, if that room is always busy. Don't they have a set schedule, like once a month or once every 2 weeks, or why is there always a conflict for that room?
Maybe I could answer that in a way. They do have unscheduled meetings for training quite often. And if somebody has scheduled that room for a meeting and they come up with an unscheduled training that's come up within the week, then the person that has scheduled that has to move someplace else because it is meant for the firemen and the ambulance corps.
But it's still a city-owned building, so they should still share it with the rest of them.
If we could find a nice place for them to have their training meetings, that would be an ideal place for other.
How often do they train in a year?
One of the things we will be doing, they're being used, and we will be contacting the Legion and the VFW to see how often their facilities are used, as well as to see how often this room is used and the room at the fire hall. So that will be part of our final report. A number of people in the responses to the questionnaire did mention the fact that if they could utilize the fire hall meeting room, that would solve their problem. If everybody who mentioned that in their questionnaire would use the fire hall room, it would probably be used 24 hours a day. That seemed to be the solution to everybody's problem. So I think what they've indicated in their responses so far is that we do have that need for meeting space, and the fire hall room is not the sole answer.
And the J.C. agree with that. We don't want to conflict with what the fire department. We feel that's a very needed use, an important part of the community. So we would like to see additional space. We'd also like to see good use of the space that is available.
Should I forget it, I also want to point out that in looking at facilities that are being utilized at this time, we'll also look at what's available through the public school system. The school board and the superintendent have been very cooperative in allowing their facilities to be used by the public during non-school hours for such things as the J.C.'s, and I know the scouts use their facilities on a regular basis also. Any other questions? Okay.
Are you ready for me?
Yes.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Juan Carmack, Great River Regional Library. I'm that bureaucrat, you know. If you're a library user and the library staff says, well, we have to get that from St. Cloud. Well, you know, I'm the bureaucrat that they're dealing with there. And I really enjoyed hearing all your comments about the library tonight. Because, you know, when I'm trying to wrench money out of the legislature and the county commissioners, you know, I work for 6 counties, so you can imagine how much wrenching I'm having to do. You know, sometimes I wonder if anybody's out there. I know they are. Great River has 90,000 registered current borrowers. I know there are a lot of people out there, but sometimes it gets real discouraging. And I need your help. I need it, you know, all the time in order to help me win these battles. When I heard the comment from Joe, the chamber person, who said that we need a well-equipped, what was, oh, I loved it, inventoried library. Right on, we do need it. We need it very badly in Melrose and everywhere else. And you know, it all costs money. And we spend a lot of time. You know, I spend all my time, I'm the paper shuffler. You know, Dorothy doesn't see me very often because I'm so busy shuffling papers and driving back and forth to the cities and putting out fires here and there. But these branches, this branch in Melrose and the other branches that we have, they're my lifeblood, they're my inspiration. They're what keep me going because this is where the people are that we're serving. This is what we're all about. I've got some specifics I want to talk about, but first of all, I want to philosophize a little bit. That's what kind of keeps me going too when I get tired of dealing with the day-to-day problems. And believe me, in a system our size, with the number of facilities and county commissioners that I deal with, there are a lot of day-to-day things to deal with. But a little philosophy always keeps me going too. Did you know that 75% of today's information did not exist 20 years ago? Now, if you've been out of high school or out of college or wherever for more than 20 years, where does that put you? If what we learned 20 years ago is obsolete. That 80% of today's information will be replaced by 1990. Boy, is that scary. And that the amount of available information doubles every 10 years. Now, you probably do know that America has worked itself out of the manufacturing business and has worked itself into the thinking business. By the year 2000, 80% of our workforce will be in the information business. Now, in Stearns County, it's become pretty apparent that we're beginning to work ourselves out of the dairy business. And what we need to do now is to start working ourselves into that thinking business. You know, that's pretty good for the rural areas because, you know, we can think out here in Stearns County just as well as they can think in Bloomington and St. Paul and Minneapolis. In fact, we're perfectly suited for it. All we need in order to get into this thinking business is information and telecommunications. And that's not so hard to bring out here. Maybe we wouldn't have to build 8-lane freeways in the cities if we were able to bring a little more out our way. And the libraries are in a perfect position to do that. Rich Defmer, who is a planner for the Minnesota State Planning Agency, wrote a real interesting paper. He called it Metropolitan and Non-Metropolitan Minnesota. Are we heading for two economies? He suggested a rural investment strategy. And in that rural investment strategy, he's suggesting that we take advantage of all of the informational infrastructures that are already in existence in Minnesota. We have a lot of them. We have extension services. We have technical institutes, they call themselves now, and all sorts of informational infrastructures. And the public library system is there. You know, the public library has been tax supported in this country for over 200 years. And over 100 years in many of the communities that I've worked in, and especially even in small towns in central Minnesota, more than 100 years. You know, we go back before planning and zoning and the city administrators and the county administrators, a long way back. The public libraries have survived a long time and they'll continue to. The public library has not come anywhere near realizing its potential. And in this economy that we're dealing with now and in this new informational economy that we're working into, perfect situation. And Melrose has the potential for becoming that community resource center. Our public library has the potential for being that. You know, we've got a nice little library now. You know, it's cute and it's comfortable. But I think that people are really not into cute and comfortable these days. They're into effective and efficient. The circulation at the Melrose Library might be double what it is now. It's at less than 20,000 annually. It very easily could be double what it is. And I know that because I have a lot of comparative statistics. I know what's possible in a public library that's in good facility, one that's easily accessible, one that has decent hours. No, we don't have decent hours in Melrose. 20 hours a week, that's crummy. And I keep coming back, you've got to help me. We've got to, in order to do that, it costs money. Easily we would, well, in Cold Spring, we serve about the same population in Cold Spring as we serve in Melrose, maybe a few more. And we circulate almost 50,000 items a year, where we're circulating less than 20,000 in Melrose. We're open more hours there. We have a real nice facility in the city building. The city people in Cold Spring passed a referendum for a city building. Must have been, time flies, 4 years ago maybe. They built a nice 10,000 square foot facility on Red River Street, or whatever they call it. You know, around the corner from the Cold Spring Bakery. That's how I tell everybody where it is, and everybody knows. It's around the corner from the bakery. And in that facility, they house the fire trucks. They have 4 big trucks. I'm sure that it's a huge door area that they have. We have 1,700 square feet for the library, which is not big enough, and certainly wouldn't be big enough in Melrose. But that's how much space we have there. City council chamber that we use for some library meetings. We have some story hours and sorts of things there. They have a nice kitchen facility. They have an office for the mayor, an office for the clerk, fire chief, fire department and police department. The police department has a little room. I think they have 3 different rooms. They have an evidence room and a little conference room and an office space. And they did it pretty economically. They put it on a pretty small site. They did a nice job putting it together, and it's very much appreciated and used by that community. And I don't think it really put them out of business. I think they did it very economically, and they're really proud of it. It works nicely, and I'm certainly pleased with what it's done for the library too. You know, it's probably time to go from cute and comfortable. Let's go to modern. I think it's time to provide a library with room for video cassette viewing, for computer space, computers, for all different sorts of uses for people in the community. Now, at this point, Great River is not buying any public service computers. But that doesn't mean we won't in the future, and it won't mean that we can't try to talk the Lions and the J.C.'s into buying a computer for that facility. And then we put in the software, and we maybe would have some ag economy sorts of things, some ag bookkeeping, some various sorts of software for business people. All sorts of things that would be available for people in the community to use. We have a few public service computers in St. Cloud now. We have some in some of the other branches too, none of which has the system bought, but we do buy the software. And we have people using those computers to do their bookkeeping for their business, to do maybe a little desktop publishing, maybe they do some PR things, all sorts of things. And today I found out, we have a video viewing station in St. Cloud. I found out today that the social services people bring over clients who have young children that they need to learn how to care for. And they sit down with the video, with their client, and view the video on parenting together, and then they go someplace and they talk about that. Well, that's a super way to use that sort of thing. There are all kinds of educational things that could be viewed in Melrose as well. So many, many possibilities, things that we haven't even thought of yet. You know, it's time to start thinking about computer online access to information. You know, we sit out here and we've got lots of nice books and you know, a few magazines, and we haul out the video from St. Cloud, but we're not anywhere near where we ought to be. We're not anywhere near providing the online access. We have 5 of our branches now hooked up we don't have a mainframe computer. Believe me, I'm working feverishly on that, but we haven't pulled it off yet. But we will have it. But we do have 5 of our branches hooked up with personal computers and with some communication software. And 5 of our branches are sending their requests every day to St. Cloud. Now, we have 4 deliveries a week. We go twice north and twice south, and Melrose is on the north delivery. Not that you're north of St. Cloud, but we start out north and then we make this swing around. So Twice a week you get the north delivery. And for the libraries that are able to get their requests in quickly, then they get their materials faster. Their people get their materials, they could get them the next day. Whereas usually it takes you a lot longer to get it in Melrose because we're not quite on the ball here. We don't quite have all the communications equipment. But eventually it's coming. Now, people need information in their daily lives. 80% of people in Minnesota are not in school anywhere. Just think of something real sobering. What if you never learned anything from the day you left a formal classroom? What if you quit learning then? Think how dumb you'd be. If you stopped learning when you walked out of that classroom, good grief, we'd be in trouble. I would be anyway. Of course, maybe you knew everything when you were 18. You ever hear that story about that 16-year-old kid who said that, I'm sorry I didn't have all these problems when I was 16 when I knew it all? Anyway, we need information all the time. And who would think that a little library in a small town could provide information for business people? But it can. Great River has a tremendous amount of information for all sorts of business uses, statistics, planning, marketing, how to start a mail order business, all sorts of things. And it's available to you. It's available to everybody. And we need to get on the ball and start providing it a little better. No, we need to start being part of this thinking economy and get out of this production economy. And the public library has the potential to be an important part of that transformation. All right, your next question is, where are we going to get the money to do this? A lot of different ways, but one thought that I wanted to tell you about that Gary asked me to be sure to mention to you is that there is some federal money available to build public library buildings. Now, there are strings a mile long attached to them, but that doesn't mean that those strings can't be cut off a little bit. No, not cut off, crawled up. That money can be available, but in order to qualify this year, really would have to get on the ball. We'd have to, I brought some materials along to give you an idea of what it would need to be. We would need to file a notice of intent on November 2nd, which is a couple of weeks. Now, that notice of intent doesn't have to be any big deal, but after that, we've only got 90 days. This federal money is administered through the Minnesota Department of Education. It would provide 33% of the cost of the project, the library part. If we built a complex, then 33% of the library part would be available by grant. In order to qualify, we'd have to have a lot of ducks in a row by February 2nd. I think that's the due date. February 1st. We'd have to have the site nailed down. We'd have to have building schematics. We'd have to hire an architect and get some building schematics. Now, those are just basic plans. And maybe have some idea of what it's going to we have to have some idea what it's going to cost to file the letter of intent. We've got to have a good idea what it's going to cost in order to file the application. The prevailing wage would have to be paid by the contractor. Wouldn't have to be union contractors necessarily, but they would have to pay prevailing wage. It's a Bacon-Davis requirement. Lots of strings attached, but sometimes it's worth it to jump through a few hoops to get some money. And how you can take a look at that. I hereby give all of this stuff to Gary. A few copies of a few things, and it's certainly available. There's much more. I meant to make more copies of things for you, but I didn't. Certainly we can talk about that. I want to talk about a few other things. I made some notes as I was listening tonight about the museum idea and whether or not the museum might work in with the library. We can't have library staff running a museum. But in Eagle Bend, we're working on a project now. The community is trying to raise money privately to build a building. And the library and the museum are going to be in the same building. And I haven't been real excited about this because I think there's not enough space. and what they're planning to do. But the museum will have a separate room of its own. And then it also will have, I think we plan for 600 square feet of display space. Now that's not too much, and that's what I'm worried about. But that will be in the library portion. And we've kind of kicked around a few ideas of how to manage that. The library staff is just going to be there. Their presence will be there. And as I was sitting here and thinking about your problem tonight, I thought maybe some kind of a facility could be built that would have a folding door. You know, one of those nice screens that you can pull across. I've seen some nice ones that are so nice they look like a wall. But you can fold them back up and put them back in. And maybe you could separate a library and a museum that way. And maybe at some point you could, when the library is open, maybe you could open that up and use it. And the library staff could supervise the displays. Anyway, I thought for you to kick around with an architect and see if it would work. And as I listened to your discussion of the meeting room space, it's the same old story that we hear everywhere. Every community needs meeting room space, and they often solve it by providing space in a public building, in a city-owned building, and I think that's a real good way to do it. And in small towns, people work together. You know, you can get into a terrible mess with meeting room space. You know, with people not being responsible and all sorts of problems, but you don't have to. And in a community like yours, I think you could all work together. Somebody's got to supervise it, but it would be very, very well used. We have in the libraries in Buffalo, Elk River, Monticello, and St. Cloud, of course, that come immediately to mind. We have very nice meeting room spaces, and they are really used. In one library, the tops people used to put their scale in the closet, and that worked as far as the library was concerned. We thought that was just fine. But we have a local board in some of these, and they decided they didn't like that top scale in the closet, so they threw them out. But, you know, it's just a matter of everybody working together and determining what the priorities for use of the building are, and making sure that you don't build a full-scale kitchen. We had quite a conflict when we were planning this building in Eagle Bend because they want a big kitchen that they can cook turkey dinners in. Well, I didn't get too excited about that because I've kind of been down the road to a lot of these things, and you know, I like to build kitchens that have a plug-in for a coffee pot. But it depends on what you want to do and how much you're going to put into supporting it and who's going to clean up. Anyway, questions for me?
There wouldn't be any conflict then with the combination library and museum as far as the river committees?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't bother me any. I'm going to have to experiment with it a little bit, but I think it can work. It's a matter of people working together. And Great River is just it's just people working together. That's why we've been as successful as we have been. Working it out. What's the problem? Let's deal with it. Somebody else have a question?
Can you put a number on square footage that you think would be adequate for a library or a community?
I'd like to see 3,500 to 4,000. I'll work on that a little bit. But when I heard you say adequate, that's what's adequate. Most of the time, we don't have adequate. Gee, it'd be nice to have adequate just once.
That includes expansion space.
Yeah.
How much room we need to house our present books and other facilities that are properly pressed right now, I should say.
Couple thousand. That would house our prison program, but if we want to do something more, provide a little space for the staff, be nice to have more.
Would you be agreeable to increasing the hours? Would Great River increase the hours?
Remember, I'm the bureaucrat.
Okay.
I do have a boss. You know, and I work for a board. Great River is a joint powers organization, 6 counties and 2 cities, City of St. Cloud and City of Little Falls. And these organizations contribute on a formula basis to the system, and we work our tails off getting more hours. As far as I'm concerned, absolutely. but you've got to help them. Because they are the persons who, the funding authorities are the counties and the city, and the state too. We get about 25% of our money from the state, and about 75%, 25% from the state and the feds. Just a small portion. We have about a $2.5 million budget, and about 80,000 comes from the feds, so that isn't too much. But most of our money comes from the state and the counties. It's all tax money right out of your pocket and mine. So we want more, we pay more. Simple equation.
Is it true that the more use the library has, then possibly the more facilities we would have? Like now we have our drop-in box where we can put our books in on the off hours, and possibly we would have more videotapes if we had more circulation.
Yep.
So it just all snowballs.
It's kind of a chicken and egg thing, you know. Not enough CERT to justify more hours, but not enough hours to get, we can't get more CERT because we don't have enough hours. But all we really need is better hours and a better facility, and everything else will take care of itself. It'll be there.
How many hours is the Cold Spring Library open?
Oh, I hate for you to ask me that. It's 34. And that's a real bummer because the populations are comparable. They're doing almost 50,000 CERT in Cold Spring. Nice location, new building. We have people going in there that have never been in the library before, and we have that here.
Yes, Ernie?
Carrie, I'd like to ask, what do other communities do to promote their library a little more? You know, I feel some of the problems personally is that we don't know what type of information our library has. We have a lot of information probably people don't even know about.
That's right.
Communities promote
No,
it?
the communities don't do it. That's my job. And we haven't done a very good job of it.
You know, you're talking tapes and records and things like that. I'm just not sure that our community is even aware that we even have it here in our community. You know, what great regional, you know, if we're considering putting out a nice facility here with a lot of information and all that, is Great Regional going to be able to support us with some type of information that we can provide for the public?
Yes. I can do anything you want. You have to help me do it. Absolutely. Because you're the basis of the library. And we do have some crummy little brochures there now, but certainly we're not getting the word out to let you know what's there for you. Everything's there. Business information, health information, whatever we can do. And we do it. Job information. Yes.
Have you ever tried using public access to get your information out there?
You're talking about the TV?
Right.
We'd love to. I'm just nuts about dealing with public access. We have all kinds of communities around that provide public access. They call me every now and then and say, Mona, when are you going to give us some tapes? And I'd say, whenever I have the staff and the time and the money to do it. I want to do it.
Would an active friend of the library association here help?
Yes, it would help. We have friends groups in a lot of communities. We are organizing a new library in Upland, and will begin in the 1st of January. As you know, our bookmobile service is, our bookmobiles are going off the road on November 20th. A sad day, but when you don't have a vehicle that runs anymore, you know, the baling wire and the scotch tape have just given out, and so the bookmobiles are gone. So we are, one new little branch will come online. And those people in that community have organized a friends group, and they have, Upsall is a town of 400 people. They have 40 or 50 people in their friends group. It will help. What else?
Any other questions?
What happens if the community decides that not to expand the library? Will it be able to continue receiving service from the plant?
As far as I'm concerned. We've been in Melrose a long time. The people need us. We'll be here. That's my decision, but I think that That probably would carry quite a bit of weight.
Problem is our level of service will never improve.
That's right. We'll have what we have right now. Anything else? Well, thanks for listening. Invite me back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Evening, John.
I've been asked by the advisory committee to give a short presentation on community needs as I see them, at least from the perspective of the police department. I'd like to preface my remarks by stating that I feel that there's often some difficulty in distinguishing between needs and wants. It could be very easy for someone who is not totally aware of conditions to inadvertently label a need as a want. I really think that a careful assessment has to be made, not only of what our needs are at the present time, but also what they might be 5 or 10 years down the road. There may very well be a need for a facility in Melrose that will serve the entire community for many years to come. Many people who come to the city office complex perhaps only spend a minimal amount of time here, paying their utility bill or something of a similar nature. They really don't have a chance to become familiar with how inconvenient things can really become. Speaking for our department, because we're located on the second floor, it's often really difficult to get an intoxicated person up the steps to our office. It can also be threatening or difficult for an older person to climb those steps. And it's virtually impossible for a handicapped person to do so. A ground level location would be much more desirable. Because of limitations in our present facility, the physical facility itself, we often find that we do not have sufficient office, meeting, storage, and garage space. And we also have a definite need for proper facilities for training purposes. It's also extremely difficult to maintain any amount of privacy when dealing with matters that are confidential or delicate in nature. Sometimes it's almost humorous watching people come up the stairs beneath that sign that says police department and look over their shoulder to see who sees them coming up and who may wonder why they're going to the police department. I should also point out the space that is allocated to us is also shared with the police reserve department. And I know that they too could also make good use of some additional space. I really think it's important to recognize that anything that might be done in response to local needs perhaps not be done for any one person, group, or department, but for the community as a whole. In other words, I don't think that we should piecemeal satisfy one little need here and another one there, because I think we're only adding to the complexity of the whole situation. I really feel confident that our present facility was only meant to be temporary, and that perhaps we should now examine if it has served its purpose. While city government agencies have been getting by in their present location, the time may have come now to consider the needs of all city agencies and how they should be responded to. Gary, I'd like to thank you for inviting me here. That's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you, John. Does anybody have any questions of John this evening? Ernie?
Gary, just one. John, do you feel that the city police department should be enacted with the city offices and with the say we built the library and city offices together? Do you feel that the city police department should be with that, or should they be in a different facility altogether? And specifically, a particular person brought up, why not put possibly an addition onto our fire hall out there for the police department, so that you would have the ambulance corps there, the police department there, and also the fire department there, if that's a possibility. What, in your opinion, do you feel that you should be enacted to the city offices or to the city fire department?
No, I guess that I really feel that it should be a part of the city office complex. I think that under more desirable set of circumstances, we would experience much more walk-in traffic, much more walk-in contact, if our location was more suitable and adapted to that type of thing. It's like I say, that climbing that flight of stairs discourages an awful lot of contact. And I don't think people are gonna, when they're downtown walking around, they wanna come to the city complex, so to speak. It's nice to do your business, whether you have to deal with law enforcement, city utilities, whatever. Do it all in one spot. Don't go one place here and then have to run to the other end of town to do something else there. I think it just makes it a lot more convenient, a lot more desirable.
Do you utilize the city office staff for some of your work?
No. We sometimes share office equipment. It makes it very convenient, and supplies from that standpoint.
We're talking about garage space too? Did you mention garage space?
Yes.
That's the first need I heard about garage space. How much space do you need for something like that?
I don't think an extensive amount. It would be very desirable at times for storage. See, we're faced with a situation when a vehicle, for whatever reason, is impounded. The minute that vehicle is impounded, we assume responsibility and the liability that comes along with that. And we do not have a secure place, to store it. And also for processing, when you have to go through that, when it's 10 below zero out, it gets a little tough to spread fingerprint dust around outside. And it would just make things a lot more desirable. And when it wasn't being used for that, it could be used to house, other vehicles.
John, I recognize the fact that one vehicle alone, and something happens, could cost a considerable amount of money, but my question is, how often do you impound in a year's time with vehicles? Do you think vehicles be impounded, or how often have they been done in the past?
Well, I guess I couldn't put my finger on a number of times, but it happens far more frequently than you think. We try not to advertise it. I think there's enough embarrassment usually in the individual who has his vehicle impounded, and then has to go to the local dealer and recover it, and that type of thing. But it happens on a fairly frequent basis.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
What I did for you tonight, I would like to maybe discuss a few different things. I've got a report written, and each of you will get a copy of it when I'm through. But what I'd like to pass out before I get started is how many meetings we really have in this meeting room in a year's time. Dorothy, you're on the committee too?
Yes.
I think most of you will be really surprised how many meetings we've had in here this last year. On the first page, you'll see the first 4 months of this year, and in January, talking about the days in a week. 2 of those days that are open are holidays, and there were only 3 other days in the entire month that there wasn't something going on.
That's in this room?
Yes. V of I meets here. Car Club meets here on Sunday nights, one Sunday out of the month. The AAs and Al-Anon meet here on a weekly basis. One of them meets in this room, and one of them meets in the basement downstairs. Job Service meets here during the day. They handle job service related type things, also food stamps. Energy Assistance is here. I don't know that you'll see that during the first months of this year, but they will be here this Thursday. And usually on that day, we have people standing in line almost outside and no place for them to sit in the lobby area. Then we have all the boards and commissions of the city that meet quite frequently. The auditors use our meeting room when they're here to do the audit, and we need to work around their meetings, as you can see in February of '87, the week of the 8th. We had a commission meeting at 5. Usually they like to continue working, but this is the only place they work, so at that particular evening, they then have to leave at 5 o'clock. When the AAs are here, they need to move everything out because the AAs will be back later. And Park Board that same week happened to also meet. So I thought this would give you some idea of how busy this place really is. I guess a few other comments is many times, and you'll probably notice that when you're going through the calendar, is that we quite frequently, and Ernie talked about it tonight, have 2 meetings in one night. And if the council is coming in to meet, planning and zoning need to meet somebody else, or quite often we've met on Wednesday nights, and if it's time for the AA meeting, we go in the middle meeting room or in the office space. The office space, I don't know if any of you people have been in that area, now has desks, so we need to then set up card tables. It's very inconvenient, and it's also not good to have that area open for the public to go in because there are files there are things on the girls' desks, and some of those things should remain confidential. So I think from that aspect, we should also look at that. Earlier tonight, you talked about the fire ambulance station meeting room, and whether that could be used more frequently. I agree, it was built by the community, and it is a facility, that should be used by the community. It's accessible to the handicap, which is something we do not have here. I would like to point out that with the schedule of the fire and ambulance, it is a little difficult at times. Eileen, you asked how often.
Well, I was asked this question.
Sure.
I was asking, so I could go
Right,
back.
I'm hoping this will help a little bit. First of all, I think the fire department has 2 regular monthly meetings, and they usually meet the first and third Mondays. The ambulance has 2 monthly meetings, and Janie, do you?
It's the first Tuesday and the third Wednesday.
Third Wednesday? Okay. Right now, the ambulance is having what they call a 24-hour refresher course. And that is 4 hours a night for 6 nights, or in 6 weeks. When they have their EMT training, which I don't know if they had any last year, but prior to that, they had an EMT course every year. That's an 81-hour course, and I believe they go 2 nights a week for 10 weeks. And so that's where the conflict comes in. If you have someone that wants to meet there regularly, do we ask them to go elsewhere? And most people that have regular monthly meetings would like a space where they don't need to, or don't have to be thrown out of, you might say, and find somewhere else to go for a few months. I talked a little bit about the AAs and Al-Anon. I don't know if any of you people have been down in our basement. The group was getting too large. They were meeting in the kitchen, and they were cramming 24 to 30 people in the kitchen Wednesday nights at their meetings. So they asked if they could use our basement. The steps is steep, narrow. That has caused some concern for liability in case someone would fall. The ceiling and the pipes down there are also very low. I don't think that anybody should be meeting in our basement, but they would rather meet in the same building, and so they choose to meet down there. I would encourage you all to go down and look and see what that area looks like. I think another reason why we have a lot of meeting use, farm mediation meetings are here a lot. We don't charge for the use of the room. Where other organizations, if they have meeting space available, may find it necessary to charge. And like I said before, the car club meets here, D of I meets here, Foresters, So there are several other groups besides just city. Now, with the meeting room being used this much, if the staff needs extra space to work on, the table's not available for us. The girls would also like to take their coffee break in here, and many times that's not available for them either. I would like to suggest that in a new complex, we would have at least 2 meeting rooms. One that would be set up like the council chambers, that would be, I guess, much larger than this to hold at least 50 people or more. The other would be larger and that you could divide it in 2 so that you could end up having 3 meetings at one time if necessary. Now, before I go into the next area, does anyone have any questions? Okay, next thing I'd like to talk about a little bit is the maintenance of the structure we have here. The fuel oil costs, and I had Karen go back today and did some figures for the last few years to give you some idea of what it costs to keep this building. The fuel oil cost in 1985 was $4,226. In 1986, it was $3,089. And in 1987, to date, and you've got to remember we had a fairly warm winter last year, of $1,021. The maintenance costs in 85 were quite minimal. It was just under $1,000. For 1986, it was $4,251. This included roof repairs, air conditioner repairs, and then some work we did in the Mel TV rooms upstairs. To date, in 1987, we've expended $7,700. $5,800 of that was for painting the exterior of the building. We also did some electrical rewiring and some replacement of carpet in the police office and purchased some window blinds in here and also in the police office. Some structural concerns that I would like to point out to all of you is we had the roof repaired in '86. The roof is currently leaking again. It is coming through by the chimneys, and I think if any of you would walk in the back of the building and look at the chimney, we're going to need to do some work. Those bricks are pulling apart, and they look like with the strong wind, some could fall off. From what Don's been able to tell, the water is running in through the chimney and then it comes into the building down below. So either we're going to be faced with building new chimneys. I don't know what else we will do. When we had the last hard rain, the men's washroom upstairs had water all over the floor. The electrical wiring is bad. In various areas, we've of course had it rewired. There are spots in the attic where the wires are bare, and many times fuses blow if only 2 things are plugged in an outlet. Insulation is poor. A few years ago when they painted in my office in the back, Jim came and said, "Do you realize that there isn't anything between the outside wall and the inside wall?" We do. We had insulation blown in several years ago. Problem with it being blown in is there's nothing secure in between, let's say, the windowsills and the wall. In the office, Jane was at her desk and she had a pile of insulation inside the office because it came right in. There's nothing, there's nothing there. It's just very poor. So to blow in insulation, we can do that, but I think it's far too costly to even consider doing that at this point. The other comment, the building is not accessible to the handicap. If we would do a lot of improvements, you're required by law to make it accessible. That would also require an elevator to be upstairs because of the police department. And where would that be put in this building? So there are a lot of issues that need to be considered. This building is very difficult to heat in the winter time. The floor is extremely cold. while it may feel like it's 80 degrees up here, your feet are freezing on the floor and there's a definite draft. I think what I can contend with that, but the dryness in here is unreal. We have 5 humidifiers running on the main floor on the cold, cold days in the wintertime to keep the humidity at the proper level. Another reason we need the humidifiers are because of our PC, our computer, photocopier. Those things don't operate if there's too much static electricity. In the summertime, it's very difficult to keep the place cool. Ventilation is poor. Council meetings, for us to be able to be on Mel TV3, we can't have our window air conditioner running, and it gets pretty hot in here sometimes. So that's a disadvantage. We have 2 window units on the main floor. Our office part, the deputy clerk's office, my office, and the girls' office area has a larger air conditioning unit. It is very noisy. It was put in, I'd say, about 18 years ago. We've been experiencing a lot of problems with it the last few years. We, I guess, hope it hangs in there for a little while longer. The restrooms in here, I feel, are very inadequate. The men's restroom is on the upstairs, and the ladies' restroom is down here on the main floor. It is very, very small. A lot of people, I don't think anyone realizes how many come in here to use our public facilities. They ask for where we have a water fountain, they ask for pay telephones, and they also ask to use the bathroom facilities. The acoustics in here are bad. Anytime we're sitting here in council meetings, you can hear every person that walks up and down the stairs, you can hear everyone that comes in the front door, you can hear the people that are talking in the lobby. And that not only happens at meeting times, but it's also when there's meetings going on in here and the office staff is working, or there are people sitting in the lobby and the office staff is trying to do their job. The other comment that Don Salzman couldn't be here tonight, the other comment he asked me to point out is when the tornado went through several years ago, as you know, this building did have some damage to it, but it didn't appear like anything too major. And he says that the roof upstairs is somewhat twisted and it is pulling apart. So that is when our leakage problems have started. So maybe there was more damage done at that time than what we realized. I guess I would like to encourage the members of the Citizens Advisory Committee and also members of the public to take a tour of this building and take a good look at what's here and what needs to be repaired and that type of thing. Does anybody have any questions?
Can you put a number on square footage for you and your staff?
What we would need? No, I will have some comments later about what I think we should be looking at, but I did not have the time to calculate how large should office spaces be, that type of thing. I also, for your information, jotted down some library costs that we've had the last few years. Interesting note, when the library in 1985 was still at the old fire hall, it costed $6,051 to heat for that year. In 1986, they moved to the current location. We're now on natural gas. It costed $608 to heat. And in 1987, to date, it costed $443. The maintenance costs at the current location, in '86, we spent $2,800. And so far this year, $425. Are there any questions about the library?
Is the library considered a city function or a city facility?
The city maintains the library. We take care of the heat, the electricity, and any maintenance.
You don't pay for the help?
No, No, that, we also, by the way, supply the furniture and those type of things in the library. The desks, the tables, and chairs, those were paid for by the city. Okay, as far as office space needs and some comments about the inadequacies, you might say, or what we contend with in here. I think you all know the office has changed considerably over the last few years. We've grown tremendously in the 1980s. And we've done the best with what we can. The computer room, for instance, is across the hall over here, and the other office staff is over there. So anytime we want to use the computer, the girls have to make a trip across the hall to get to it. Jane and my offices are in the back. 2 halls to get there. It's quite crazy sometimes, and people are going in and out of my office to get to hers. And then as far as the office space where the girls are, we have all those desks up front. We also have the PC equipment. We also have the photocopier equipment. And to have them all together at times is very disruptive, and it affects productivity. You have people coming in and out to meet with one of them for one reason. All the rest of them can hear the conversations that are going on, and it's hard for them to concentrate on their work. It's difficult, for instance, for the accounting officer to handle cutoffs with the customers when all the other staff can hear what the customer is saying. Usually that's a little bit embarrassing for them. It would make much more sense for them to be able to meet where no one else can hear what conversation is being carried on. And that's also true for the payroll clerk. You have personnel matters that may or may not be confidential. It really shouldn't be that all the other staff can hear the conversation that is going on. The storage area we have is inadequate. Right now we need additional filing space, but I don't have any place to file in the cabinet. We have a vault on the main floor, and we have a storage vault in the basement. Both aren't large enough to store the records that we need to keep. This is the permanent records, and we also have to keep a lot of our other records at least 6 to 10 years. We did quite a bit of work in our basement during last winter and found that a lot of our permanent records were damaged because of the dampness on the outside wall. We need to find a drier place to put our permanent records. It's not cost feasible for us to buy the equipment down there to keep the area dry. Like I mentioned before, I think the lobby area is inadequate. When this meeting room is used and people are out in the lobby waiting, it is disruptive to my staff as well as the people that are sitting out there. For instance, farm mediation meetings would be better if it was a little bit off, so that if those people are sitting out waiting, they're not out there for everyone else to know that that's why they're here. Energy assistance and job service. Encourage anybody to stop in on Thursday. We'll probably have 30 or 50 or 80 people standing outside in the lobby in the morning making an application for fuel assistance. It makes it tough for parking outside, and it also is tough for the girls to be working in the office, because either the people will be wondering, they can go in next, they'll want copies of maybe some of the records they have, that kind of thing. As I mentioned earlier, the space on the main floor is all being utilized. There is no reserve space available. In other words, we don't have any place right now on which to grow. I feel that conference space is necessary for the office staff. I think you all may know that we are hiring an economic development coordinator through the state economic development, Minnesota Department of Trade and Economic Development internship program. The only place I'll be able to put that person, I think at this point, is in the same office as the deputy clerk. Because we really don't have another place to put a desk, and that room will then be very cramped. I think I mentioned payphone and water fountain are some things that I've always been asked about, and parking outside is something that we need to take a good look at. Any questions? Okay, what I would like to do is run through this information I did put in the questionnaire response as far as what I felt our needs were here at the city office. And I would like to run through those with you. I feel there should be separate offices for the city clerk treasurer, for the deputy clerk, the economic development coordinator, and the accounting officer. There should be reserved space for future use of city, for future use and also for city officials. Let's say the mayor would like to come in, or any of the council members or commission members, and do some work in the office. I think there should be a place that they should be able to go in and to use. Other needs to be considered: a receptionist area for the receptionists that take the utility bills, answer the phone, and wait on any other people that come in. We should have a computer room, and maybe in the same room or close to a data word processing area or areas. Office equipment area and office storage supply. We should have a vault. We should have record storage area for long-term. Conference area, and I think our meeting rooms then could be used for conference areas. The lobby area would maybe include a vending area, which there'd be pop machine, pay telephone, water pump, those kinds of things. Kitchen facilities and a lounge area. Adequate employee and visiting parking, and a drive-through window has been brought up many times by citizens, like the telephone company has or the bank, for people to make their utility payments. In closing, I feel that the committee, as well as citizens of Melrose, must consider the future needs of the community. A new structure is definitely needed. It is no longer cost feasible to repair and maintain the existing facilities. Any questions?